Early crop vigour is critical, especially in tight seasons, with growers always looking for smarter ways to get crops out of the ground faster and stronger. On the Yorke Peninsula, Central Ag Solutions agronomist Sam Holmes had noticed crops sown on or near old rows were getting away faster and setting themselves up for better yield potential. To help understand why sowing on or near previous stubble lines can give young crops a head start, Sam established a project funded by the South Australian Grain Industry Trust.
We originally started with a farmer who was playing around and in a disc seeder, and when the seeder was dropping into the row, we were seeing benefits, and we were trying to work out why those benefits were occurring. And so we set up a SAGIT project, trying to work out whether it was phosphorus residual derived or whether it was salt derived or moisture content still sitting in that seed row from last year. And as the research has gone on, we've really noticed that it's pretty much primarily salt based. We were trying to get a bit of a number at the time on that in regards to what that benefit was, and a little bit of, telling a farmer to turn on, like, sow on the row versus off the row. Before we actually conducted any research, we were, based on yield maps, we were seeing sort of up to about a tonne to the hectare yield improvement, which we thought was conservative at the time in a cereal phase. But like we said, we didn't really understand where that yield benefit was coming from, because we thought that the root diseases would be compounding sowing on the row, but couldn't really work it out. So we thought we'd try and apply for a project with SAGIT and work out what really was going on and the benefits behind it.
Sam acknowledges that the research goes against traditional wisdom of sowing on the interrow, but says precision accuracy is required to achieve the best results from on-row sowing.
Inter-row sowing originally started just as part of handling stubble at seeding time, and making sure that, particularly in those bigger stubble crops remaining, that they could actually get through without any issues with seeding that following year. This goes against it, and people are still nervous about on-row seeding because they're worried it's going to create a mess and they're going to get blockages, but they often find it's actually just pushing it to the side, and they can get through some reasonable stubbles with it. Most of our work is in that 3 tonne to 4.5 tonne sort of stubbles, but even those ones that are 4 tonne, they're still getting through quite well, seeding into them the following year. And so I suppose it goes against it, and we're trying to work out how, getting the headspace to make that work. Probably the bit that I push on to farmers, or make them very well aware, that the benefits are only when you get very close to last year's row. So we want no further than an inch away from last year's soil row, otherwise we lose the benefits of the on-row sowing process.
Sam said the research has shown that on-row sowing has a particular benefit in coastal areas where the salt content of soils is generally higher. His research has shown yield improvements of up to 1 tonne per hectare in barley.
We've seen those benefits of on-row sowing by not only are they phosphorus responsive, those soil types, but sowing on row, where we've been putting 100 kilos of MAP down the tube with the seed, we've been getting responses of up to 400 kilos in a lentil phase and over a tonne in a cereal phase. We've shown that the response is primarily driven from salt in the soil, and some of the sites that we've been looking at we didn't think were severe as far as salt levels based on a soil test, but we're still getting those responses. So we think it's got a great effect for a lot of regions, particularly a lot of coastal regions in South Australia. Part of our project, we were able to survey up and down the coast, and they were just random surveys of paddocks as we went along the Yorke Peninsula, and we were shown there's a large number of paddocks that are going to respond from this. I think off the top of my head it was 50% of paddocks would get that sort of a response based on our survey, and so we see the yield benefits there. We know that that's going to respond to a lot of soil types, so we think it's a bit of a no-brainer for farmers. First response is to go and do a soil test, get a bit of an indication of what your salt tolerance is like in your soil. But if it's sitting there at above 0.2 of an ECE 1 to 5 number on your soil test, then start having a play around, because we think there's some good benefits to be had by playing with it.